You're listening to Season 14 of the Virtual Tailgate, a media bullcrap production covering college football in the Atlantic Coast Conference. I'm Andrew, and joining me tonight is David.
On December 1st, 1963, Wendell Scott, a native of Danville, Virginia, pulled into victory lane of the Turkey Day 200 at Speedway Park in Jacksonville, Florida, becoming the first African-American driver to secure a win in NASCAR's top circuit. The vehicle Scott was piloting that day, the number 34 Chevrolet.
Also joining me tonight is Jeff.
Well, you know, I had a great intro ready to go for the show tonight, but I have my own PSA to go. We're really becoming an educational podcast here because I want to talk to you all about something very important with the weather that's coming across the country right now. I want to talk to you all about corn sweat. Have you guys ever heard of corn sweat?
I actually did read about it today.
Yeah, have you heard about corn sweat? Yeah, this is the first time I've ever heard about this. So if you live in the Corn Belt region of the country here, you can notice the dew temperatures are a lot higher than they are around, and that's because mature corn is releasing up to 4,000 gallons of water a day in the air per acre. Per acre, per acre. In Illinois alone, that's the equivalent of over 72,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools of water every day. So added humidity stresses our bodies, preventing us from sweating and cooling off as efficiently in dry air. If you must work or be outside this week, take frequent water breaks and try to avoid the peak heating of the day in the afternoon. So watch out, guys. Humidity and corn sweat, it's not good for you.
We had a crisis, dire need of towels.
That's for sure.
And finally joining us tonight is Jared.
The following parody service announcement is from the Virtual Tailgate. So, a drug dealer offered you some blow, and you didn't take it. With that being said, did the dealer mention their price? Just asking for a friend.
Corn sweat, is that the best you've got?
And Andrew, you forgot to play the sound.
I played the sound.
Is that?
No,
That's the sound you wanted.
no, I wanted the. Come on, you know
I
one
just-
that's
I
on
just-
the TV
David,
network.
And you're
getting
part
on
of the
me over
problem.
Corn sweat, Jared just like. Jared just did a
All
PSA
right,
for
Jared.
Corn sweat was Jared's.
There it is. Oh, well done, Andrew. Thanks to the soundboard guy.
I think Jared, the confusion was that we thought you were going to tell us something interesting or entertaining or something.
Well, that is entertaining. I was asking about where the pusher manual.
Well, I think the real issue, David, is it's all relative. Like we set the bar so high that there was no way he could live up to it.
Yeah, I mean, what
I
do you want me to do? Do another poop one next week? I mean, I did that last week.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much what we've come to expect from you over the last 14
Going to watch
seasons.
that number 34 car drive around.
Well, what about the number? You know, I can mention about the zero car.
Be sure to join the
Dads I have
tailgate
on the
on
turf.
Facebook at Virtual Tailgate or email us at
Jeez.
virtualtailgate@mediabullcrap.com. Jeff?
Andrew's just powering through. Nobody even knows how to like reach us. They couldn't even hear Andrew
We
talking
don't, even,
right now.
we don't even know what the hell platform we're on right now. Are we still on that one beforehand, or are we on the new one now? I mean, I don't even know.
Does anybody check this this inbox? I have no idea. We could be getting
Don't
tons
worry,
of fan
folks. The
fan
email will be
mail, guys.
repeated at the bottom of the show.
They might be asking. What if they're asking for our autograph and we are ignoring our loyal fans?
And trust
What's
me,
our
I
Instagram
use this
name?
email address to sign up for new things. There are no emails coming in.
By the way, real quick, what's our AOL like handle? Do we still have one
Virtual
of those?
Tailgate.
Oh, okay.
I think we should change the corn sweat.
Something like that, yeah.
We need to start our own subreddit.
Right now, so do you want to know what our most recent messages here are? We've gotten a security alert whenever I signed in, a activate your subscription by email message, another security alert, Spotify, and a message from our new hosting provider. We are rocking and rolling right now, guys. You want me to check spam just in case?
I mean, if only
That's
for
what
you,
you
Connor.
Top-notch
think
pickle-
you have to.
Top-notch pickleball paddles from Joying Pickleball. Discover high-quality custom pickleball paddles for customer. That's our spam. So I think we're doing all right.
Oh, wait. There's no like enhancements, if you will, like
Yeah.
in your spam. I mean,
No, nobody knows this email address except for every time we give it out on here, and obviously no one's listening.
well, obviously somebody that's trying
Hey,
to sell
look,
some pickleball stuff is listening.
are you guys gonna make me have to cut all this, or are we gonna get this thing done in an hour? This is the question.
Well, that's really up to Jared. He's normally the one that rants on, but there was surprisingly we are not even into September yet. We're not even officially into week 1 yet. But there was football that was played last week in the ACC. So we've nevertheless the games were few and far in between, and played in varying continents, if you will. But nevertheless, we did pick some players of the week this week for the few games that we had. So Andrew, why don't you go ahead and lead us off with your player of the week?
All right. Well, my player of the week is the quarterback from SMU, Preston Stone. Did not have like what you would think of as overall a great performance, just 254 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. But that 1 touchdown was really key. In the last 4 minutes of the game, Preston threw a 37-yard pass. A couple of plays later, he ran twice in order to secure a first down. And then after an incomplete pass, threw another 37-yard pass for the go-ahead touchdown. Just like put the team on his back, on his shoulders, and carried him downfield with the help of one other player from SMU that I may be jumping the line on this, Jeff, but I think you oughta go next.
Yeah, so really, the games were few and far in between, but there were some standout efforts. To go along with Preston Stone, who Andrew just talked about, was R.J. Maryland, the wide receiver with SMU. You might noticed, we're going to one of the newcomers to the ACC with SMU in our game ball picks, but big game, big fourth quarter for the Mustangs came in as 27.5 point favorites over the Nevada Wolfpack. It was a game that was in doubt and really looked bleak for the Mustangs for the majority of the game. R.J. Maryland, as Andrew talked about, caught a go-ahead touchdown pass from his quarterback Preston Stone with 1:18 remaining to put the Mustangs on top, 29-24, and their first lead of the game. So big fourth quarter, and for the game in total, ended up with 8 catches for a very, very impressive 162 yards and that all-important TD. So big opening week 0 for RJ Maryland of the Mustangs. Jared, I think you've got maybe a different game, maybe the only other game we had to talk about, right?
Yeah, we're gonna go to across the pond, as you say, over in Ireland, where the Yellow Jackets pulled out the upset against Florida State, and my game ball is gonna go to Jamal Haynes, junior running back for the Yellow Jackets. The junior hauled the rock 11 times for only 75 yards, but 2 touchdowns, as well as catching the ball 2 times in the air for 16. It just, Georgia Tech had pretty much a consistent ground game throughout the whole game, time of possession, and key throws from their quarterback, Haynes, I think it was his name. I should have written it down, but he was phenomenal at the end and really was making the plays as well. So if there had to be another game ball I could give out, like Jeff usually does, I would give it out to the quarterback as well.
I'm gonna stay in the Florida State versus Georgia Tech game as well. This, as you all know, was a game that was where the luck of the Irish was with special teams, and especially the kicking games. Everybody remembers that Georgia Tech won it on a walk-off 44-yarder from their kicker, Aiden Burr. But my game ball is actually going to the other side of the ledger. That's Florida State kicker Ryan Fitzgerald. He managed to connect in the game on 2 field goals longer than 50 yards, including the record breaker at the end of the first half. As time expired, he nailed a 59-yard kick. It's the longest ever in an ACC conference game, and it's good enough, even in a losing effort, to get the very first career game ball for Florida State Seminole kicker Ryan Fitzgerald.
It's amazing. If it wasn't for him, Florida State would have kind of been blown out. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Me. Oh, for those who are like may have been watching the game live, what prompted Florida State to go for 2? And is that what is that what made their kicker mad enough to have 2 field goals for longer than 50 yards?
It's a statistical thing. It's a statistical thing. It's one of those things that the NFL has been doing. Some coaches, they go for 2 at first because supposedly the stats say you actually have a better chance of getting 2 points on your first touchdown than you do than any other part of the game. And if you get it, then you're statistically,
You
then
can't lose.
yeah, it's one of those. If you get it, then you're going to be up by a point, by average or whatever. And if you fail to get it, you can go for 2 again. And it should likely be where you will
This
get.
is how people lose their whole fortune in Las
It
Vegas.
really is.
Right?
I was gonna say
It's the sabermetrics crap. It's like you have a 53% chance of getting your 2-point conversion converted on the first time. And if you fail, you have like a 51% chance. So it's still 50-50. What's the PAT rate? Oh, that's about 85%.
Trust me, bro.
Yeah, bro, just trust me.
Okay, it is exactly what I thought then, and that was a glorious explanation. And thank you.
Davey nailed it, man. Just trust me, bro. Speaking of trusting bros, let's go ahead and run through the power rankings. This is not the preseason. This is active. We are now into the live, well, I guess preseason-ish, but we got to taste a sample, if you will, of our 2 ACC teams, SMU. That's still weird to say. 3 Georgia Tech and Florida State in action. We got an idea of what we think are seeing up ahead and what we think the 3 teams at the bottom should be worried about. So our top 5, we still have Virginia Tech, who played Saturday down in Nashville against Vanderbilt. Number 4, we have SMU. Did not move up or down the power rankings after their 29-24 comeback win against Nevada. Number 3 is NC State. They move up a spot for just being themselves. Congratulations. Hope they take advantage of it. Speaking of moving up, though, number 2, and this is going to be interesting here. We have the Yellow Jackets at number 2 right now. Now, Atlanta, don't get too crazy, all right? This is just, I think, a blip on the radar type of thing. We got to get more data to figure out who's the better teams, but well deserved at this point. As we've noted here, Andrew, David, and Jeff and I were talking about, the Yellow Jackets do have an interesting game coming up Saturday against Georgia State. And with the travel back from Ireland to the U.S. and playing on a Saturday with only 1 week rest, even though the Yellow Jackets are favored by, I think, 23 points is what we're getting right now, this is a possible letdown game as a heads up. So I guess I'll just pause it right here. Does anybody else want to say anything about this real quick before we move on to power rankings?
No, I mean, just like you said, it's a possible letdown spot for the Yellow Jackets. They're riding high on the strength of that victory. They have Florida State in the unenviable position of being the first ACC program ever to be ranked number 17 in the conference. And the Yellow Jackets just need to watch out because it's a decent Georgia State team and possibility to just be too high and then crash back down upon return landing here.
There you have it. So back to the power rankings. Number 1, we got Louisville moved up a spot by default because Florida State dropped out of our top 5. But the Cardinals moved up a spot by being themselves. Congratulations again, just like NC State. Well done. You well earned it. Back to the bottom 3 now, 15, 16, 17. There are no changes. We still have Wake Forest, Virginia, and Stanford at 15, 16, 17 respectively. But we will mention the honorable mention of Florida State getting the special soundbite that we have on standby here. Andrew?
He clambered up, looked in, and nearly fell off in surprise.
Someone defecating.
Yeah, that was a big poopy.
Well, that's a pretty good segue, I think, into talking about some upcoming games. We've made the decision this season that with the expanded conference, especially in weeks like this, where almost everybody is playing out of conference games, there's just no practical way to talk about 16 different matchups this week. There's also no reason to. Most of the games this week do not look to be very competitive. Lots of them have very high point spreads. We're not going to dive. We've made picks on all of those. We'll come back and update and eat crow next week if those are wrong. But we're going to go straight to what we think of as the 3 games of the week. And the first of those is not a game that's predicted to be especially close, but it's very significant because of what just happened to the Seminoles. They've got another conference matchup coming up on Monday evening. They're playing host to the Boston College Eagles. FSU is a 21.5-point favorite in this one, but they are going to be feeling all the pressure in the world. Fellas, what are you looking for here? What do you think we're going to see out of the Seminoles? Do they bounce back and look again like a conference contender, or is there something really rotten in Tallahassee right now?
It's one of those things. I remember we jokingly laughed. I think someone had put Mike Norvell, the head coach of Florida State, in top 10 of hot seats. And I don't know if that was the website we kind of referred to or just something, I may have stumbled upon like on CBS Sports or whatever. I was saying Mike Norvell's on the hot seat. Like, oh, whatever, dude. He just got to the fringe of the college football playoff. And, you could argue should have been in the college football playoff. If you start 0-2 against Georgia Tech and Boston College, it is going to heat up fast, like surprisingly fast. Like these are teams, if for Florida State with all their complaining about how they're getting underpaid by the ACC contract that they're in for the TV revenue, and they're trying to look for a way out, possibly along with Clemson and who else, what other schools. And, if you're like the Big Ten or the SEC, supposedly, you see what Florida State's doing, and like they're supposedly time to shine to prove that they're a bigger and better school than what the ACC can offer, and you can't beat Georgia Tech or Boston College. What's the incentive again? Like for these two conferences to say, come on board at full at a full pro rata. But back to the on-field product. At the end of the day, if Mike Norvell loses this game, it's going to get really hot down to Tallahassee. With that being said, I think Florida State still wins the game, but I think Boston College does cover the spread. I think Florida State's going to be a little hungover. No pun intended for being over in Ireland, but they're going to be hungover, and it's going to be, I think, a little closer than 21.5.
Boston College last year gave Florida State its closest game of the season, both to date and then looking back pretty much the whole way. Yeah, there was an overtime game against Clemson the next week, but that game ended 31-29. Remember, Boston College went on to beat now ACC strong team SMU in its bowl game last year.
In Fenway Park.
Yeah. And I think this game goes to Florida State this year. Last year that was the game was in at BC. And so it feels very unlikely to me that Florida State's going to lose this game, but I absolutely agree with Jared. That spread is way too big. I swear that 21.5 point spread is the same spread that they gave Boston College and Florida State last year, and it was a 2-point game. So this is going to be a slugfest. I don't doubt the coming back from an international flight. Yeah, they get a couple more days of rest. But also Boston College has a extra week of game footage to watch on them that they've been preparing for this week. I think I kind of believed before last week that Mike Norvell was finally the Florida State whisperer and that it didn't really matter. But as I mentioned pre-show to at least one of the guys, I actually think that Florida State was the Jordan Travis and Friends show, kind of like the Superman and Friends show, where really all you cared about was the main titled dude. And I don't think DJ is Jordan Travis in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and Andrew, that was awfully close to Lamar Jackson, the hot garbage. What you just said.
I'm trying not to repeat myself, dude.
I need to say two things, Andrew, in response to what you said. First, I need to acknowledge how grateful I am for your commitment to the show. That even while you were on some remote location a million miles away, beginning that response, you still powered through until you returned to it.
Was I too far? I was probably leaned back instead of forward on my mic. I'm still getting used to a better mic.
It was pretty much like when Jared's going to the bathroom and he's left his mic on in the living room. That's kind of what it sounded.
Wait, so does that mean I need to try this. Can you guys hear me? Where am I?
The second, actually, I now have three things to say because I think your point about Jordan Travis a year ago is a good one, and it does. I know that this is not a popular take in ACC land, but it does kind of provide even further validation of the playoff committee's decision last year, where there really was a team that was kind of centered around one guy, and once he went down, they were not legitimate contenders for much of anything. Maybe much of the same this year. And I just want to echo what both you and Jared have said around Florida State is certainly the likely winners of this game, but that spread is, I mean, that's 21 and a hook is an enormous spread. Florida State can play very well, win convincingly, and still not cover that spread. So you got to take BC with the points. But Jeff, I want to send it to you because I think you've got a contrary position.
Well, I've got a couple of contrary positions here. One is if anything the public is with you all, because when I was just doing some research, it popped up that the spread is now Florida State minus 15.5. So they're hitting that sucker hard on the spread. But I'm locked into picking Florida State in the spread, and it's not a pick I like. So this is one of those where it is not a pick that I'm a fan of, but I feel like it is out of necessity. Jared hit on it when we talked about this, is that this is a Florida State team that we all talked about being in the ACC championship game. We all talked about it like just last week, ACC championship contender. And yet, if they lose this game, now I don't think many of us think they're going to lose it because nobody took BC with BC on the money line. But if they lose this game, or even are in a position where they could lose this game, that really, I mean, basically if they lose this game, it's season over. I mean, we're 2 weeks in. There's no mulligans when you start your season two with two conference games instead of playing playing cupcakes to warm up where they don't count against your conference record. So this is a game where I feel like Florida State has to come out and assert that it is the team that the ACC expects it to be, or else there's going to be a lot of trouble the rest of the season. So that is not saying that they can't, that they can end up laying an egg, that they aren't going to just squeak out a win, the 2-point win Andrew referenced from last season. But if this team is the team that we all predicted them to be just a week ago, they need to come out and assert their dominance against the Boston College Eagles, a team that had a new head coach, a team that has a good quarterback but had a lot of questions last year, a team that gave up a lot of points, a defense that was not very good last year. So I think it's a team that they have to assert that they are who everybody says they are in the ACC. And it's it's really, you guys said this is Mike Norvell, that seat could get warm really quick if this game goes south. And I do think there's somebody else mentioned if there was something rotten down in Florida. And I do think there's also a lot of pressure on DJU for this, because he got run out of you can say that he transferred on his own accord, but Clemson, not so great. Now he's back in the ACC. First game under center for Florida State. Not so great. There's a lot of pressure on him at quarterback, being back in the ACC now.
Be interesting to see, and we may know something more after this week's action. Florida State, this is a very new team. They really are in some ways rebuilding from that strong team a year ago. And I wonder if we just the hangover from the successful regular season they had last season if we just haven't vastly overrated what Mike Norvell had coming back. They had built towards last year's team, and there's just a big wild card this year. So maybe next week we'll have a clearer sense of where they might shake out here in the early going. Another game a little bit like that. We're going to stay in the Sunshine State. This is maybe the most eagerly anticipated matchup of the week in some ways. It's the Hurricanes of Miami traveling up to Gainesville to take on the Florida Gators. It's a 2.5-point spread right now. The Hurricanes are favored to win it on the road as the Florida team that really struggled a year ago. Miami kind of seems to struggle every year, but nobody enters the season with any higher expectations year in, year out than Mario Cristobal and this team. They've got Cam Ward at quarterback. They've got lots of energy from the transfer portal, lots of hope and expectations for this season. What do you see here?
Jared, do you want to sing it in harmony? Money
Show
line.
Money line.
Florida.
We're in the money. We're in the money. Yeah, Andrew and I'll speak on behalf of you, Andrew. You can speak up when I'm finished here or just whenever. Andrew and I know what Miami is. We don't care what people say what Miami's going to be this year. A potential playoff team, an ACC contender. We've been hearing that crap for the past 2 decades of our lives. You know how many ACC titles Miami has had? The same as UVA, the same as Stanford, the same as Cal, SMU. They are not contenders. I don't care how much you promote them. I don't care how much you say they're irrelevant. I just don't care because I look at facts, and the facts are Miami and games are going to be close. This will be a close game. I know Florida with Billy Napier is a supposedly dumpster fire down there in Gainesville because he's on the hot seat. And if he loses this game, his butt could be canned too. But the thing is a rivalry game. They haven't played in a while. It's down in Gainesville in the swamp. It is a tough place to play. And there's one thing I can tell you right now. Miami has not been for the past 2 decades. And that is mentally tough. They will lose this game. It may be close, but they will lose this game. And since Florida is considered the underdog at plus 114, go ahead and take money, place it on the Gators, and enjoy the revenue.
I do need to pick one fight with one of the things that you said, David, that no one is more hyped year in, year out than Mario Cristobal with Miami. I mean, I feel like Manny Diaz, Mark Richt, Al Golden, Randy Shannon, Larry Coker, all just as hyped year in and year out.
What do all these guys have in common?
Well, Larry Coker at least can boast a championship, but that's it.
Yeah. So just, yeah.
Never thought Andrew and I would be on the same side, but here we are.
Yeah, Andrew, if I were you, I'd be really reconsidering things after learning that.
It's a week of memes, man. We're just going for it.
All right, so Jeff,
I'm
Jeff,
praying for this sport. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, so I'm kind of I'm a fence rider here in the picks this week. I've got Florida State and the plus 2.5 here. So I'm not going all the way to Jared and Andrew and picking the money line, but I think this is 2.5 is not a big spread, but this is a game that feels like I think, Jared, did you use the term dumpster fire? I mean, it feels like a game that has that potential because Miami comes in, they've got a transferred in quarterback. We don't know what they're getting. We talked a lot about last week with the season preview, how so many of these teams, there's so much, lack of continuity with the transfer portal that you don't even know what you're getting come week one. Miami's in that situation. Florida, call it what it is. I mean, 3-5 in the SEC last year. I mean, that's not a great record. Finished the season with 5 straight losses to end the season, but the SEC is better than the ACC. overall, and Miami has not performed up to snuff in the ACC thus far. So, all in all, not knowing what either one of these teams has, I'm gonna kind of ride it and say I think this is gonna be a tight game. I'm gonna take Florida, Florida in the plus 2.5 in this matchup, but I think it could end up being a close game with Florida potentially pulling out the upset, but I think it's going to be a tight one, one way or another between these two teams.
All right. All I'm going to say here is I disagree with all of you for two reasons. The first is that nobody has ever gone wrong betting on the U. So I'm going to take Miami and give the points here. Second, more importantly, nobody's ever been wrong betting against the three of you. And so I feel confident that not only does Miami win, they win big in this one. Miami's actually pretty good. Florida is not very good at all, and I think we're going to see that on Saturday.
People who went wrong betting on the U: Manny Diaz, Mark Richt, Al Golden, Randy Shannon.
But there's a lot of things that could go wrong in there. One is no one's ever gone wrong betting on the U, and then the other one is Miami's actually a pretty good team. Yeah, I've heard that one before too.
All right, just mark my words. I'm high on
2020.
So speaking of that,
2022, 2021.
so David, you said like the one thing that you can always bet on is betting against the three of us, right? So that leads me to my next question. And what the hell happens when we all four agree on the same bet?
That's a very good question. So here's the in some ways the marquee matchup of the weekend. We've got the Clemson Tigers, perennial contender, traveling down to Athens to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. Bulldogs are 13.5-point favorites here, and all of us are taking Georgia and giving the points. Let me ask the question this way: Is this a reflection on our belief that Clemson's not very good, or is it just a result of Georgia being so good that we can't imagine anybody in the ACC hanging with them?
I do believe it's the second. Because, yeah, I mean, now granted, it was a Jordan Travis less Florida State, but the last time that an AC team faced Georgia, they lost 63-3.
Yeah, that didn't go well. No, they didn't have all their team opted out, right?
I mean, essentially, yes, but still. Now, the last time these two teams faced, the final score was 10-3, but that was a very different Clemson team, I do believe, 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is it going to take? What does it take for Clemson to at least cover the spread here? What do they need to do to be competitive in this one?
I mean, the defense has to be the Clemson defense.
All the above, right? I mean,
no, I'm not going to go that far. I really do think like we have to have the faith in the Clemson defense to keep Georgia's offense under control. I don't think that Clemson's going to put up enough points to win this game, but if they can play, that's been Dabo's hallmark, has been that defense first team for a while. It may have gotten a little hidden in some of the some of the glory days teams, but like defense has always been his focus. I think if that shines through, they've got a chance of keeping it within 2 scores, but I don't know how likely that is.
So interesting you say that, because I was going to say almost the exact opposite, that I think the key to this thing is Cade Klubnik. And if he can be the guy that we saw at times down the stretch last season and get something moving on off, I think the problem here is that Clemson doesn't really have the offensive firepower to hang with Georgia. But if they're going to keep it close enough, Klubnik has got to move the football. They've got to put points on the board. And because I think, it's not crazy to think this thing ends at, 27-14 and they squeak out a cover. But I don't see how, if Clemson can't get a couple touchdowns on the board, I just don't see how they hold Georgia low enough on the scoreboard to cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's hard to see. It's hard to see them winning a shootout against this Georgia team. I think you guys already kind of talked about it, so I don't want to dance around it too much more. I do think Clemson's chances ride on the defense. One of the good things that Dabo has done year after year, and he's pretty adamant that he's not, he doesn't do the whole transfer portal thing. And even before all of the transfer stuff kind of took off, he could have six, 5, 6 guys go in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft, and he could retool year after year after year on that defense, and that's really what carried Clemson. We've talked a lot about the offensive players that were also that were also part of that were also part of those teams, and the quarterbacks and the tools that they have. But really was that defense that carried them, was the consistent ballast for those teams. So I think once again it rides with him replacing the players that they lost on the defensive side of the ball, and sliding them in, keeping the game low scoring, and like you said, David, Cade Klubnik, taking the next step as a quarterback. Clemson, I think that's their chance. That's their way to keep it close and keep it under the spread, and maybe even pull off a shocking upset. But it feels like when you have to we have to put all those caveats in, it makes it feel like a very uncertain territory to wade into when it comes to a team that's a known commodity like the Bulldogs.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jim.
I was supposed to say I really have nothing much to add. I mean, Clemson borderline has to play the perfect game, and Georgia has to make mistakes, like dumb mistakes, actually, at this point. For I think even the Tigers to have a shot, it's not a Dabo thing; it's just a talent issue, and Georgia's just got that like it's just in folds. There's just no way to put it. It's just unbelievable, and I think it's going to show kind of early and often. I don't think Clemson can hang with Georgia, and honestly, I'm surprised it's not closer to like 20 points for the spread.
Oh, let's see if it moved. Let's see.
A good call. It may have.
Did we influence it? Are we influencers now? Somebody's already hitting that line?
In most of the lines, it has stayed put at 13.5. Some it has moved to 14, and some it has moved to 13. So that's inconclusive.
Let me ask a question about this game. Given the new landscape of college football with the 12-team playoff and everything, do you all feel like for Clemson, is this a good game to have on the schedule?
If you win, it's ingenious.
I actually think
it's a good
game. I think it's a good game regardless now, because if you don't think there's much talent in the ACC, which we know that is a longtime bugaboo of Mr. Sweeney with this,
but we don't play nobody.
Then getting a chance to go up against some really good talent at the start of the season, getting some film of your guys playing against teams that you might face in the playoffs, even if you lose, it's an out-of-conference game. Out-of-conference games flat don't matter if you can run the table in your conference now. If Clemson turns around and wins this thing outright, drives all the way, Florida State's not what they were expecting, and they beat Louisville in the ACC championship or something like that, you've got a real good chance at doing something interesting in the playoffs because your team has played against better talent. I think it's probably a pretty good idea for a team like Clemson. Now, is it a good idea for a team like Virginia or Georgia Tech or Syracuse? Probably not. You probably just lose.
That's Georgia. That's number 2 in the ACC power rankings. Georgia Tech, you're talking about there.
This is true.
No, I agree with you. I think that there's just no downside to this for Clemson. I mean, even if they get boat raced here, like you said, it doesn't matter. Run the table in the ACC, you're in the playoff anyway. And if you do manage to pull an upset or even have a good showing, that's going to reflect well if they find themselves needing an at-large spot at the end of the year. I think the good thing, one good thing about the expanded playoffs is I think you're going to see more and more matchups like this, where for both teams the potential benefit outweighs any risk now, which is very different than just a year ago, and certainly different than before we had the playoff at all.
Now, do you think the so this game is big because it's being played right at the beginning of the season, but in the past, only the 4 playoff slots, the timing of your losses, even if people didn't want to say it, became critical. It did become critical, even if people didn't want to act like it mattered. How do you think that impacts some of these, these big matchups that they used to have at the end of the season? Do we think that any of those games that used to be played at the end of the season get moved up, or do we think that with the 12-team playoff, it's really irrelevant at this point because the penalty to playing those games like out of conference, even if it's in November, just doesn't really impact your seat, I guess your positioning, I guess, since you've got the conference games still to go.
You talking about like Clemson's matchup with the Citadel come November?
No, I'm talking about that one. Because who like there used to be, and I'm trying to think like offhand, like there used to be quite a few, maybe they aren't anymore, like ACC and kind of SEC matchups.
I mean, they'll
like
play South Carolina at the end of the year.
Yeah,
course.
which doesn't like matter so much anymore. I thought there used to be like more that were like top 25, maybe not quite so much anymore, but I don't know. It's just it was. I just don't know if the time. I mean, do you guys think the timing of the losses has as much weight as it used to?
I don't think it's not as much. It can't, right?
Yeah.
Losing just isn't as big a deal now.
Well, but the thing is, if you're not the conference champion, then losing is a much bigger deal, right? Like, so if like Clemson loses this game but doesn't become the conference champion, they're unlikely to be ranked in that 5 through 12 ranking for all the rest of the teams for the playoff. So like, if you're going to run your conference, then losing otherwise isn't a big deal. But I think for the ACC, it's always a good idea to schedule an early season game against another Power 4 conference. For the Big Ten, I don't think it's a good idea for them to play anyone big and worthy early in the season or late in the season or anything, because if Michigan and Ohio State are going to end up, basically both 12-0 going into their championship or something like that, then if one of them had a loss and then ends up losing the championship, they're not even going to be in the top 12. So I think it's a very specific thing to the ACC being the weakest of the 4 Power 4 conferences, that it's always a good idea for our teams to do it. So,
all right, guys. Well, we'll find out a week from now how right or wrong these picks were. But thanks for hanging in there with us.
All right, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you guys before we wrap up. No further explanation, but just pick one of the other games that we haven't talked about and tell the people that they should make the same bet as you've made at home. I'll give you guys a little bit of time to look in your sheet and pick which one you want to go with. But for me, I'm going to tell folks easy money is to take Houston Christian University covering the spread against SMU if someone will actually let you take that action. I doubt there are going to be many places that do. But David, do you have one that you want to toss out?
Ah, man, that's all right. I'm trying to decide between two, but I think I'm going to go with the Hokies on the road. So, we've talked about this Virginia Tech team being really the this is the season that Brent Pry has been building towards. Hokies brought back all of their weapons on offense and defense, and even special teams from a year ago. They're poised to be very, very good. They're going on the road to a Vanderbilt team that is not looking to have a fantastic season. Point spread there is only 13 in the hook. I think the Hokies win by far more than 2 touchdowns. That's easy money betting on the Hokies, and I just feel my only hope is I hope I'm not jinxing them here.
Okay, that was a good pick, but David didn't follow the instructions. You're just supposed to tell the people what the bet was. Jeff.
Oh,
okay. So I'm just supposed to tell them the bet. So
tell them the one that they should take. Your favorite one.
All right. Okay. All right. Favorite one is I'm taking Kent State on the against Pitt minus 23.5 Panthers. So it's
that
Kent
is a
State
ridiculous spread. That is absolutely a ridiculous spread. Jared.
Fun fact: Kent State was 1-11 last year. Maybe that's why that.
Hold on,
is
I have to add a little bit on that. The spread has moved in favor of Pitt since it opened. That is a ridiculous spread.
Oh, Andrew, it sounds like Kent State's not very good.
Did any of them see Pitt's offense? I'm not sure Pitt can put 23 points up.
Well,
they could shut out Kent State and still not cover.
Kenny Pickett killed their quarterback.
I think he's looking for work. Don't think he's doing too much right now in the NFL.
But Penny Kickett is.
Penny
He's got a big mustache.
Okay, I got mine.
Marino is coming through the door.
So, all right, my pick here is we're going back to the state of Virginia. Richmond at Virginia. Give me Richmond to cover against UVA.
Come on.
I think I think that's easy money, and if you're really adventurous, go ahead and take it.
Right.
Take the money line. But I got Richmond in the spread.
Jared.
He's right, He's really, really right.
That is a big point spread for them.
That is a lot of points.
That's it for the virtual tailgate.
David, here's the real question. Do you have the faith after watching that Cavalier that they can beat a team by 3 touchdowns?
No, I'm taking the money line.
Me too. All right. Send your questions or comments to virtualtailgate@mediabullcrap.com.
And remember these 3 rules. Never get less than 12 hours sleep.
Never play cards with a guy who has the same first name as the city.
Never get involved with a woman with a tattoo of a dagger on her body.
Stick to that. Everything else is cream cheese.
Corn sweat. So weird.